I think we will be driven by our curiosity, and it will be fueled by this supported way that feels very natural and powerful, right? So it won't be about absorbing information the way we've historically done, but I think experiencing and interacting with knowledge in sort of that more personalized on-demand way, where technology will be more of an extension of our intellectual and creative capabilities that we have right now. No matter where you are, if you have a question, you never have to learn alone. You never stop learning because you get stuck and don't know the answer, and you never stop asking questions when you're fueled by your curiosity.
Hi, I'm Boaz, founder and CEO of Simply Augmented, and I'm excited that you are tuning in to the Shift AI podcast, a show that explores what it takes to thrive and adapt to the changing workplace in the digital age of remote work and AI. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to have Monica Aries as our guest. Monica is the Executive Director of Innovation, Digital Education, and Analytics at Imperial College London Business School Idea Lab, and has spent her career focusing on using immersive technology to increase access to education. If you're someone interested in the way that AI is developing as a tool to be used in learning and development, you're not going to want to miss this episode. We also want to send out a special thank you to Simply Augmented for sponsoring this episode. This is going to be a great show, and we're super excited to talk to Monica today, and we can't wait to learn more from her. Let's get to it. Monica, thank you for coming on to the Shift AI podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
So I want to start, your background is really interesting. You studied at Harvard, you worked at Amazon, you worked at Meta, and now you're the Executive Director of Innovation of Digital Education at the Analytics Lab and at the Imperial College Business School. And I'm really, really excited to hear about the stuff that you're working on. You've spent most of your career thinking a lot about education and thinking about it in the terms of immersive technology. We've known each other from our time at Meta, where we were both working on immersive technology, but now you're really deep into AI. And so I want to hear a little bit more about what you're doing now and what you're excited about.
Yeah. So again, I think most of my career I spent trying to figure out ways to find solutions for education using these newer technologies. And they were all living in these disparate places for so long. So we couldn't quite get a lot of them to take off. And it's really the convergence of having AI come into some of the more immersive experiences that we've been focused on that has finally allowed us to have the tools to create personalized learning at scale. So it's been fun to go from classroom to big tech to build products and solutions to now realizing that next step is finding the hub where we can bring together the tech, the research, all the solutions from startups and do it across every vertical. So I do think this moment belongs to higher ed in a way that can finally, it's like enough is matured and enough opportunities there for us to start to shape what that true future of learning really looks like. And it's needed solutions for so long. And we just have been kind of longing for these technologies to make it work. And we never quite got there until I think right now we're able to turn that page onto something that is going to truly transform learning for the future.
Can you connect the dots a little bit between the time at Amazon and Meta and the work that you were doing with learning and development and what you're doing now in higher education?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's fun kind of how you get to all these different places. I first went to Meta or to Amazon because I recognized I needed to figure out how to scale these technologies and the way that I was teaching. So if I can back up one step before that even, I was an educator for about 10 years. And that second phase of being an educator was at a planetarium. And I didn't know it then, but the planetarium was really the precursor to VR. And, my entire sort of beating drum inside of me is how do I make people curious? I think that's what I recognized was missing from education. And that's what I deeply wanted to do. And man, I loved the job at the planetarium because it was all about making people feel curious, right? We come in and say, hey, we don't have answers to half of these questions. So what you're thinking might actually be right in 10 years. And, I would have to figure out how to create, this is way back before the digital projectors, how to create objects that could rotate and revolve across the dome and make the stars move and sort of bring things to life in a way that would be engaging. So I loved the thinking in 3D and taking people to places that would otherwise be impossible to get to, or to broaden their understanding by understanding our place in the universe. So a lot of people came into the planetarium and would just say, wow, you have to reach more people than those that are coming into this space. So the challenge I started really thinking about was how do we scale interactive, immersive experiences for learning, either for those that don't have educators who might be able to teach this way or who don't have the technology. So it led me to figure out where the big tech companies could help. And Amazon at that time was opening up a new platform for learning. And so I went, and essentially the early days were sort of the equivalent of putting PDFs online. And I just remember saying, wait a minute, there's such a better opportunity for this technology. Why don't we make it move? And why don't we allow it for people to learn through sort of these choose your own adventure options? So we did the whole white paper experience and got up to leadership, and they agreed we should do these interactive learning labs. Our tools were pretty basic at the time, but we did what we could so that we could start to make things come off the page, so you could learn through your own curiosity. So it was a lot of fun. And then moving on to Facebook, at the time, I think it was in my second week there, someone gave me a VR headset to try, and it was super early. It was Gear VR. Technology wasn't great. Experiences were terrible, but the second I put the headset on, I just knew it was the kind of medium I'd always been looking for, where we could
Yeah,
really transport the learner
you saw it.
into these spaces. Yeah. And it wasn't just about exploration, which was sort of where our brains went in the beginning. I was like, let's bring everyone to space, which of course I loved being in the astronomy business, but we were so surprised when we built a lot of these experiences like Anne Frank House and a couple others, that it was this massive empathy generator. And it was that moment of, oh my gosh, we can use this to teach something that's otherwise fairly difficult to teach. We haven't been able to teach some of these more human skills all that well, but through this technology and this medium, we could allow people to walk in someone else's shoes or transport them to places so they could interact with nature and animals in situations in ways that made them care and hopefully take action. So just a whole new set of tools that I found fascinating. And it was really fun to kind of be in the beginning days of that. Yeah.
You were getting back about learners that were using headsets versus other means.
Yep. So certainly that increased engagement and retention right off the bat, right? I think you've seen some of those like OSO VR case studies that, if you're doing surgical training, those that studied with VR, they got the fidelity, the confidence, the muscle memory very quickly on how to do some of these surgeries versus those that learned traditional training methods. Beyond that, during the pandemic, we started sending out a lot of headsets to, educational institutions so that the students could feel connected because they never even met each other, most of them. And they didn't want to just learn in VR. They almost instantly went to the places that were social so they could connect with each other. And
Yeah.
it's a reminder that learning is social. It's almost tribal, right? And I think we're used to learning together with each other, from each other. And when we took that away from the learning experience, we really suffered in the pandemic. And so to see that use case for VR, bringing people together so that learning could unlock those moments was really powerful. And I think beyond that, now there's such an interesting opportunity to blend the digital with the physical through mixed reality and pass through in ways that are just completely changing that landscape of being able to interact with our world in completely different ways and get the overlay of information when and where you need it. Again, just unlocking that curiosity as we kind of go through.
And now, before we dive deeper, I want to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about one of our podcast partners. As a listener of this show, I know you're trying to stay on top of all things AI and tech, which is why you have to check out the amazing GeekWire podcast, produced by GeekWire and hosted by Todd Bishop. It's a treasure of insights featuring industry leaders and the latest tech trends that are shaping our world, and the perfect companion podcast to shift AI. GeekWire podcast is where technology meets curiosity and covers the world of technology, startups, and geek culture. Expand your tech horizons and join the conversation. Tune into the GeekWire podcast today, a perfect complement to our own discussions here. Don't miss out. Follow the GeekWire podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or your favorite listening app. Now back to the episode. There's so many different things to think about between the VR work that you were doing at Meta and the AI work that you're doing now. When I think about empathy and AI, I look into the future and I think the value that humans will have is their ability to connect with other humans. And as the machines get better and better and better, that's really what we're left with, is the ability to engage and connect with other humans. And I know that a lot of people are afraid of the machines and afraid of AI and the robots and the way that it's going to take their jobs. But I think that there's a powerful opportunity to teach EQ and other ways that we can connect with others that can be really powerful. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're sort of that brink of a new era that we're on, I think ultimately is all going to help us become more human, right? And so it's like, especially in the learning space, I always joke, it's like, well, we have been for so long, our machines were fairly passive, just obediently doing what we instructed them to do. And so our learning ended up mirroring this behavior, and rote memorization and standardized tests were the norm. But it's like we were training people to become robots. But now that the robots are here, we can turn our education to focusing on becoming human, right? So that's leveraging humans, what we're good at, which is the awareness and higher order thinking and problem solving. And then we can complement those skills with the machines to do tasks that are too tedious or time consuming or beyond our capabilities. But that idea, if you sort of look at the progression of where we've gone with technology, right now we have a lot of devices. Everyone is sort of detached from feeling present because we have a lot of rectangles in front of us. That's just the way that we've been able to access that information. But ideally, the goal is to move away from it. And these technologies are helping us slowly get there. Through AI, we can just use natural language and have conversations without having a screen between us and the real world or what we're interacting with. Through XR, we can start to just use hand motions and head tilts and eye tracking and start to understand our own bodies and capabilities as we go through it. But eventually that will just become like a seamless integration with us. We probably won't even notice it. Maybe AR glasses are the next step. And beyond that, hopefully it's something that's almost invisible. And that presence curve, if you graph presence against it, it's like back in the campfire days, we had a ton of presence. We were surrounded by people and learning experiences, and we were living a first person experience with it. Right now we've kind of just gone into the strange age where we're like a third person observer of our stories through our technology. And we're human. We want to be more present with each other. So I think as the technology becomes more seamlessly integrated and less visible, our presence with the world and with the content we're learning and with each other is going to go up tremendously. And so AI is going to be a huge driver of that ability for us to not only feel more present, but almost have like this intelligent presence, right? Because we'll be more present with the world around us, but we'll have all of the intelligence that we currently get from our technology and our devices, but it'll all be seamlessly integrated. So the value it's going to bring for learning is, we'll solve probably four of our biggest problems, which is that engagement, retention, personalized learning, and assessment. But it's going to help us. It'll scrape all the surfaces that we're learning on in all the places. It will find those patterns, and then it will help deliver content based on continuous assessment and observation that's really relevant to us when and where we need it. So changing us into not just learning inside institutions, but really this continuous ubiquitous ability to embrace lifelong learning in a way that we just haven't had the tools to do at scale before.
Let's talk more about that because the notion of lifelong learning, I think, is on everyone's mind. I know you're working very diligently at Imperial College around chatbots and agents that your student population will have to be able to get them over the hump when they're stuck, really push them and it be a research tool for them. Talk a little bit about the way you're thinking about AI for learners in higher education
Yeah.
in the Imperial College environment.
So, there's like this nice long scale. It's like, what are we doing right now? What's going to happen 5 years, 10 years from now? But, the easiest place for us to start during the pandemic, they always say it takes a crisis to innovate. And the pandemic did that in the learning space to some degree. It helped us bring learning online in a way that increased access. So you can now get your MBA if you're home and you have children, or if you're continuing to work just about at any university, right? So that was amazing. But the experience itself, it's challenging. It's very much one directional flow of content. It's a lot of professors who go in and they record their lectures and then we put them online. That process alone takes a lot of hours. It's creating the script, it's putting the teleprompter, going to the green room, recording those lectures. Someone has to drive that, then edit it and put it on. And of course, 10 days later, someone wants to change it because learning is continuously, needing updates and changes. And so to have to keep doing that is a very challenging process. And so the very first step is, why don't we make an AI avatar of you? We'll ingest all of the content from your course, all the books you've ever written, all the reading material you're assigning, all the lectures that you've previously given that are recorded, so that it has the knowledge base that you would normally have. At the very, very least, without changing anything, the way the first movies were just recorded plays, we could just have the avatar read that script. But if a student has a question, they can stop the avatar, ask it a question, and have a full-on conversation with them in a way that you couldn't do from just a pre-recorded video. So right there, there's a tremendous amount of ability to increase the scaffolding support that we provide for students. When they're at home, they can do it at 3 a.m. They can turn that lecture into a panel discussion. Say, actually, I'd rather learn from a bunch of different personas and experts in the field. Let me hear a discussion and a debate over it, and I learn better that way. Or a podcast if they want to go walking, right? So at the very least, we can do that. I'm sure you've heard so much about the AI assistants that we've already started to see. I've created a ton of GPT bots just for myself to help all the areas that I need help with, right? And so everyone's going to start to have that will probably follow on their learning journey from start to finish. And, people are so worried about it becoming a cheating mechanism, which it's not. We're going to help people understand. I mean, if it is something that it can just write your paper for you, then we need to stop and say, then maybe we don't have people write papers anymore. We can raise the foundation from which we start and use that class time for something that's more along debate and discussion and that higher order thinking. So I think it's going to help students organize their time. It's going to help them bounce ideas off. It's going to help them say, this is what my professor's looking for in this particular assignment. What am I missing? Is my argument complete? And all these ways that help inform students to do better. But the opportunity there is also to use it as a space to improve EQ and emotional health and some of those routines that we often isolate ourselves from, rather than embedding all of it into learning, which is the most important thing we can do. We kind of look for it in separate places. So if this technology can help us improve that scale and drip it into our day throughout as we go, that will be a huge improvement, again, into helping us become more human. And eventually it'll be all the AI agents that we can bring together. So a lot of online learning is, we've all been in those classes that are super engaging and the conversation's good and the rhetorical questions are going and there's debate and we all learn active communication and listening skills. And we've definitely been in the opposite where it's kind of falls flat and people are very tired and not really engaging. And so can we use some of our AI agents to help understand where that energy of the class is and how to help build, again, some of those communication skills and debate skills and active listening skills that if you're lucky and you're in a good class, that happens, but it's not a guarantee. And now we can help people practice those. So the AI agents will help with the class dynamic, but also we're moving into a space where we can have simulations on just about everything before we actually do it. So a couple of the fun projects that we're tossing around are things like, VC pitch simulations where you can create your pitch and practice it, but then you often go into that pitch and you get personas at the other side of the table that you're not quite prepared to interact with. And so we can help people by giving them different personas as they go through these simulations to practice over and over and get kind of those skills. Or before big M&A meetings that you might have, we can take, most people are on YouTube somewhere, right? You can sort of understand who you're meeting with and you can put that into the AI and turn into a little, some kind of like, I just need a quick simulation for the next few days as I practice how to handle this conversation and what may or may not happen throughout. So all these ways that we can, again, just make learning so much more dynamic and adaptive. And we've gone from technology that's passive to now it kind of notices things. It's a little bit interactive and answers some props. But that next phase that we're heading into is really to have it become adaptive and adapt the world around us to accommodate. So we're slowly morphing into that. And I think the easiest place to start is sort of that platform-based learning surface that we already have, which we already know is very one directional and not that engaging, and starting to turn it. So that's kind of in the delivery. And then assessment, my gosh, we have all these cool new tools for assessing. And I think that's going to be something that's going to revolutionize how we're understanding how people are performing and learning.
Before we go further with the interview, I want to take a moment to tell you about one of our podcast sponsors, Simply Augmented, and how they are transforming businesses with Gen AI solutions. Simply Augmented specializes in helping organizations uncover and address internal workflow challenges that Gen AI can solve. Their comprehensive process starts by identifying and prioritizing business problems and then assessing each based on value, effort, and risk. Once a problem is selected, the Simply Augmented team tests and validates the solution to ensure it works. Only after this thorough validation do they draft technical requirements, which serves as a blueprint for building and deploying the solution. The real beauty of partnering with Simply Augmented is that they don't just stop at strategy and feasibility studies. They actually stand up the solutions and manage them for you so you can focus on what you do best. Experiencing this innovative approach to deploying Gen AI solutions, visit simplyaugmented.ai and click on the Contact Us button to learn more. That's simplyaugmented.ai. Now back to the episode. It's so cool that you started out teaching. When you take a step back and think about your early years as a learner and your family, was education always part of growing up? And then I know that you spent a lot of time with different kinds of learners in the
Yep.
classroom, but also tutoring students that were struggling. Can you talk a little bit about that and about both your family upbringing and then also how that played out in your early jobs as a teacher?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I mean, my family, so we're from Mallorca, Spain, little island in the Mediterranean, which is amazing. My dad, musician there, he's a stand-up bass player in a band when my parents met, and my mom's from the United States, but she was traveling through Mallorca to go to Italy, met my dad, stayed for 7 years. They didn't speak a word of each other's language at first, which is a really fun part of the story, but we ended up moving to Cape Cod, and my mom was a director coordinator of a school of dance. And so, or it was actually an art school. So we got to go, my sisters and I had free lessons. We went to drama and dance and
Nice.
music and all these things that really just were sort of this foundation of storytelling, of community building, of just different ways to interpret the world. So I feel really grateful that I had that community. And my dad, who started off as a musician, when he first came to the country, didn't speak the language. So he got a job as a Spanish teacher, which is kind of a nice natural next step. But he ended up becoming a builder, and he's absolutely one of the most curious and creative people I know. He's retired now, but the work he did on houses that he built was just meticulous, right? Like he put so much care into every single detail, even what was behind the walls. And because of this, he ended up loving to help us with our science fair projects and our history replicas that we had to do. They were museum worthy. We would like go into school half embarrassed because it was so obvious that our dad did these presentations with us. But, growing up, we never hired anyone to fix anything. If it broke, whether it was our cars, the electricity, the plumbing, anything in our house, like we would go to my dad and we'd say, "Hey, can you fix this?" And his answer is always, "I don't know, but I bet we can figure it out." And every single time he just figured it out. And so I think that mentality really stuck with me for my entire career. It's like, you don't have to know how to do it. You just have to have the curiosity and creativity and then that bravery and persistence to do it. And so learning is so much about that. And I think, like I said, my main thing that I've tried to change in education is I want people to feel curious. And a lot of that is persistence, it's trial and error. It's wanting to learn more about something on your own and then innovating ways to kind of figure out how to bring that to life or to do it differently. And so I was able to do this. My classroom was full of more hands-on project type of things and bigger thinking, which is fun. The planetarium clearly had a lot of that. But, there was a time when I was on maternity leave that I decided to take my math students who were really struggling and tutor them and see if I could help improve their grades. Because when I was a teacher, I had 150 of them come through my classroom every day, and it was very hard to reach everyone. So in working with them, I quickly realized that typically there was like one little place where their knowledge was, there was a gap that we could fill. But the main key to success was confidence. It was how do we help just build that confidence and that adaptability that, okay, you don't know it, but draw it, write it out, start whatever it is, you can figure out alternate ways to get to the answer for most of these kinds of things, or just question it. Like, what is it that you don't understand about it? Right. And so I think all those things, really building that confidence was a huge driver for them to finally go from D students to A students. And I believe there's a way we can integrate a lot of that into our AI, again, dripping in like all those emotional health, the EQ stuff. Can we leverage it to understand the tenets of confidence and help people, as they're using AI, not just continue to do the same thing over and over again, but if it notices you've done something the same way for 5 times, can it push you to go just beyond your boundaries and to think a little bit differently and to try something in a slightly different way so that we're continuously helping people live their life more, through curiosity and some of that wonder that, when we bring it in, it opens up pathways to so many solutions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, clearly you were a mentor to a lot of students. And I wonder who was a mentor to you over the years. Can you think of folks that impacted you? Because moving forward, I think that's going to be a big part of how we learn. The
Yeah.
humans that are in our lives and the machines that are in our lives, we're going to have to discern. And I just wonder who were the folks in your life that really made an impact?
It's funny. I think if I have like when you just asked that question, the first thought that came to mind in my very early days of Meta, we were coming up with new ideas all the time. And you probably felt this too, but it's like we were building fast and furious. And I quickly realized the power of show, don't tell, because usually I'd have to build out a prototype to demo it for the leaders and the decision makers. Otherwise, it was too abstract and it was really hard for people to understand that. So I remember my VP at the time scheduled a one-on-one with me. He told me, I want to make sure that you always bring all of your ideas to the table and you let the people at the table take them away. And it was so powerful, right? Because those words gave me permission to think big and show my vision without filtering for those that might not think the same way or might not be there yet. And ultimately, this helped me pitch, successful products to product teams and eventually to Mark Zuckerberg, who put 150 million behind my vision to build an ecosystem for learning in the metaverse. And I hope that I'm in a position now that I can really pay that forward to any other women entering the field who might be afraid to share some of my ideas, because being a visionary thinker, you do kind of sometimes feel like you're sitting alone. And there's a lot of energy and effort in bringing people along. But having that key, again, it was that permission. It was the bravery that somebody handed to me and just said, make sure you do that. There, other people can strip it, but you always make sure that you bring those ideas. And I thought that was a really powerful thing to do.
It makes sense. I mean, it goes back to your confidence statement. And when you have the confidence to and have the permission to go big, it makes a huge difference. You've been spending the last few years traveling around the world and speaking and thinking and talking about big ideas. What do you think about the future when you really look 5, 10 years out? All the things that you're doing with AI and learning, what do you think and talk about when you think about that kind of future?
I mean, I think, I do love public speaking. It brings together a lot of what I loved about teaching. I think planting ideas for people, innovation takes storytelling so people know where we're going and then showing them what we have right now and kind of bouncing back and forth between them so people want to start moving forward with it. But I mean, I hope the future of learning 5 to 10 years from now, and again, we can kind of go on like super crazy or sort of what's mainly possible. But I think we will be driven by our curiosity and it will be fueled by this supported way that feels very natural and powerful, right? So it won't be about absorbing information the way we've historically done, but I think experiencing and interacting with knowledge in sort of that more personalized on-demand way where technology will be more of an extension of our intellectual and creative capabilities that we have right now. But I think obviously it's going to go beyond academic institutions. It will be continuous and ubiquitous. And I think we're going to foster that lifelong learning and curiosity that brings together all the different pieces we've already talked about. And I think, again, it'll just be so seamlessly integrated with who we are. It's going to be able to read our data. If anybody has a learning difference, it's going to know that and it's going to help adapt. We're seeing this already with ADHD and with dyslexic students, which is amazing. It's helping them stay in their environments with their peers because this technology can detect it and then correct it in the moment through a more socially acceptable way. So all of that, plus, no matter where you are, if you have a question, you never have to learn alone. You never stop learning because you get stuck and don't know the answer, and you never stop asking questions when you're fueled by your curiosity. So all of that is the way we ultimately want to keep fueling that learning environment and processing going forward. Way into the future, it's possible, right, that we're just going to download skills and knowledge directly into our brains. So similar to the way that we currently download apps onto our phone, but it'll be through advanced neural interfaces that will allow us to just instantly learn whatever it is, a new language or some kind of complex subject. And if we ever get to that era, right, which, little pieces might come in faster than we think, but it won't be about access to information. I think it's going to be about navigating and making sense of this limitless landscape of knowledge that's in front of us and continuously growing. Like the content creation will never stop forming, right? Every time someone has some new knowledge to share, a way to look at it, we're going to be creating this content continuously. So it's going to be a really interesting space that's kind of moldable and continuous and in this exponential way, but it'll blend together digital, physical, 3D, 2D. It's going to be an unbelievable experience for all of us, I think.
It's really amazing to think about, and the idea of having an agent with you with different domain expertise all the time, continuously, sounds amazing. And I can think of all sorts of situations where I might have different agents for different things and help me through the areas that I'm stuck on. Sounds fantastic. Well, I always end the show with this question. In 2 words, if you could describe the future of work, the future of education, future of AI, what would those 2 words be? And then you can elaborate.
So definitely human. I want to say invisible. I don't know if that's the right word, but hear me out, right? Because I think together that human and invisible, like they paint a future of education that is deeply rooted in human connection and experiences it, but it's supported by this technology that is integrated so seamlessly, it just becomes a natural and nearly invisible part of the learning process. So somehow that combination of helping us become more human and more connected and more present, but in a way that the technology feels invisible and seamless.
I love that. That sounds amazing. I really, really appreciate you taking the time, Monica. It was wonderful to have you on the show. And it's really interesting to think about education in the context of all these AI tools, because a lot of the conversation's been focused on business. And I think that we're going to find that education has a huge impact on our abilities in the future. And so I really got a lot out of this, and I really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, excited about all of it. I mean, look, if we want to prepare people for the future of learning, we have to help them be adaptable, right? There's going to be 25 million jobs that'll be displaced or lost in the next 10 years. And it doesn't, we've handled those, job extinctions before and come out stronger. But the most important thing we can do is help people be adaptable. And in order to prepare, it has to start with education. So it is that precursor moving into the future of work too.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Such a pleasure to have Monica as our guest on today's episode. Monica's dedication to the field of education and learning is pushing the boundaries on how we access education, and she is revolutionizing the way people learn. If you want to stay connected to Monica, you can find her on LinkedIn. If you're interested in how she thinks about Gen AI and education, definitely connect with her and keep up with her posts and activities online. I continue to be amazed by the guests we've had on the show, and I'm excited about the ones joining us in the near future. I truly appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you for listening to this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the Shift AI podcast for more exciting interviews and to the Simply AI Weekly newsletter for updates on how AI can help you scale your business. The Shift AI podcast is syndicated by GeekWire, and we are grateful to have the show sponsored by Simply Augmented. Our theme music was created by Dave Angel.